Thanks for tuning in and welcome back to the shop. This is our 2013 Mitsubishi Fuso FG and we are building it into an Overland camper. Now that we've put the styrofoam insulation in the floor, it's time to cut up some plywood and make a subfloor. Now, as much as I would have, no pun intended, liked to avoid using wood for the subfloor, it was one of the two areas where I decided I would be okay, no pun intended, with using wood. As you can see, I've marked out the areas of all of the frames where they cross over so that once the wood is down, I'll be able to use those as markers as to where my lines go across for the screws that are going to fasten the plywood down. The main floor area is actually quite simple. There's a 4x8 sheet of plywood here, trimmed to 80 3/4 inches, a 4x8 sheet of plywood here, trimmed to 80 3/4 inches, and a 4x8 sheet here, trimmed to 55. The remainder of the floor is a very small section at the front, which I'll make with the offcuts from these three sheets. Just before I cut that third sheet down to 55 inches, I'm going to put the other two in to make sure I haven't cut one short. Because if one somehow ended up 1/4 inch short, I can always cut that one down to 55 and recut my 80 3/4. I don't think I cut it wrong, but it's always good to check. Well, I think that came out all right. I've got an 80 3/4 inch piece there. I've got an 80 3/4 inch piece here. I've got a gap in the middle that's 48 inches wide and 55 inches long. I've got to go outside and cut the last sheet, drop that in, and then most of the subfloor is done. Now that I have these three sheets cut and fit in place, I need to cut the pieces for the front. The unfortunate part is I have some nice 4-foot wide offcuts that I could use to make two pieces to fit up there, but that would leave me with a seam in the middle, which doesn't have any support under it. That means I need to make the front out of 3 pieces so that the edge of each piece lands on a support. Now the key to making those pieces the right size actually starts back here. I need to make sure that I have an 1.5 inch gap between the back of this plywood and the front face of the spare tire well. And that's because I have a piece of this foam core panel that's going to slide in between the plywood and the wall, same way as it does at the outside edges. So I need to get this sheet in the exact right spot, fasten it down, and then work my way forward, pulling the sheets tight at the seam. The most straightforward way to know that I actually have enough space in here is to use some of the offcuts from when we cut the corners off of the sidewalls. So I can just slip this in here, this way, and I want a pretty tight fit. Clamp that in, and I know that's where this sheet of plywood needs to be, and it can hold it there while I'm fastening it down along the rest of the length of the truck. It's a little bit too tight here. Let's see if I can shift the plywood there. So what's likely happening is right here, this weld is just sticking up a little bit more than it does on the other side. So I don't quite have enough room here. Let me see if I can kick the sheet over. A little bit more. So that's going in there now. Just want to get just a little bit more. Let's see if I can kick the other sheets over. Kind of a brutal way of doing it, but it works. There we go. So that piece is dropped down in there now. Clamp this one in place. whoop. It's only as far down as the weld, and that's fine because I'll use the router on the back of the back corner of the panel to allow it to clear the weld. So this now, looks like it's gone crooked on the other side, but this now I know if I secure this sheet here, I'm going to have enough room to get my panel in the back. To secure the subfloor down to the aluminum, I'm going to be using 1024 threaded fasteners at about 3/4 inch long. I'm using a flat head so that they get countersunk into the wood, and then they'll be flat with the top of the wood. Here's my fasteners. So I'll be drilling through the wood and the aluminum with that bit. I will then tap the aluminum with my tap here. I'll re-drill the wood with a larger bit so the threads don't catch, and then countersink the top so that the head sits flush. I'm going to be running along where the box tube is, so the box tube is underneath here. I'm going to come in 1 inch from the end, and then I'll hit the 16, 32, and I'll come back 1 inch from the edge of the sheet up there. Now, in addition to running along the box tube, I do have the frames going across, so I'll put a couple of fasteners on each frame that goes across, and that'll give me extra fastening because as I came across here, I went to 16 and 32, and my frame is at 2 feet, so that'll get me another fastener just off center here. Whenever drilling and tapping multiple holes, it's best to secure the sheet with a few screws first so it can't move, and then drill the rest of the holes. I think you get the idea. I got to do that a whole bunch of times. Well, it has been a couple of very interrupted days, but all the plywood is now fit and all the screw holes are drilled and tapped into the aluminum. And that means now that it's finished, I have to take it all back apart again so that we can sand the wood down and then seal it. While Krista is inside painting the floor panels to seal them up, I'm going to go around the bottom edge all the way around and just seal the last little gap between the wall and the aluminum frame. Now, this is going to be underneath the floor once the floor is in, but I just want to seal up that edge so that should we get any moisture coming in either from the outside somehow through a seal, which I can't see, or if we have a big water spill on the inside, it doesn't get through and underneath the walls. Just a little bit of sealant, same stuff I used to stick the panels in, little bead all the way around before we put the floorboards in. Now that the sealant has had time to dry, I'm going to start reinstalling the front subfloor panels, the mid subfloor panels, and we've got one panel that's just finishing up being painted. Once they're all in, I'll tighten all the screws down, and we're going to do another coat on the top side just to give that an extra layer of protection. If you're wondering why I'm putting all of the screws in by hand, it's for the same reason you don't jam a lug nut on with an impact gun to start. What I want to be sure is that all the screws are straight and properly engaged in the threads, so I don't cross-thread the holes. Five sheets down, one to go. You know, for October, it's pretty warm. If you are one of the people who has purchased items through Amazon links in my video descriptions, thank you. Every little bit helps to support this channel.
If you're not one of those people, it's easy and doesn't cost you anything. Just open the video description, click on one of the links, and then go about your regular Amazon shopping. Amazon sends me a small percentage of anything that you purchase within 24 hours. It really is that easy, and like I said, it doesn't cost you anything.
With all the screws put into place manually, I know that I haven't cross-threaded anything on the way in. They're most of the way in. I'm going to do the final tightening with my cordless with the clutch set so that I don't strip any of the aluminum holes. And that should be it. We're ready for a coat of paint.
When tightening these screws, I'm pulling the top surface of the head flush with the top surface of the wood. Some screws take more torque to get there, but they all sink in and pull the wood down nicely. There are a lot of screws holding this floor down.
And that's it, the last screw. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, give us a thumbs up, and if you got any questions, throw them in the comment section down below, and I'll do what I can to answer them. Don't forget to check out the video description. That's where I put the useful information and links that you may find helpful. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.